You're listening to Feathers, a podcast of stories about God speaking and his people having just enough faith to believe him and obey. I hope these stories inspire you and encourage you to take flight in your own faith. I'm your host, Amy Bennett, and this is episode 1. Well, hey friends, and welcome to Feathers. I am so excited about today. You guys are going to get to hear from Jessie Weaver. Jessie is a stay-at-home mom to 3 little ones, Libby, David, and Joshua, and she's a freelance writer and editor. She works for Parent Life and Home Life magazines. She's been blogging since 2006 and last year made the move to jessieweaver.net. And I have met Jessie at the Illume blogging conference. I talked about that conference in episode 0 in my Feather story. And her story with her family has a lot to do with their plans for their career and where they were going to be living. And it's just so wonderful to see how God totally disrupted those plans and forced them into a different way, but a way that was so good. And we can see how faithful he was to give them what they needed when they didn't even know they needed it. So I hope you enjoy. Well, hey, Jessie, welcome to Feathers.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and your family?
Sure. I'm Jessie. My family and I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and my husband and I have been married for 10 and a half years. We live on campus at the private school where he teaches, and we have 3 kids, Libby, David, and Joshua. They are 6, 4, and my baby will be 2 next month in March.
Aww.
I'm having a very hard time coming to grips with that.
Yes, and I've actually met Joshua. So this is the first time I think we've talked since Illume 2013, I think it was. And yep, and so I got to hold Joshua when he was how old at that time?
He was about 7 months old, I think, which is why he tagged along with me to Illume. Couldn't leave his mama.
So he was adorable. He got to, I don't know, he was slobbering, chewing on something in my lap, but he's adorable.
We like him a lot.
But I bet he's busy these days.
Oh, he is crazy. He is full of mischief.
Okay, so the other thing that we have to talk about, I have to touch on, is that I have my diffuser with my essential oils. I know you'll appreciate that.
Yes, I actually, my children have confiscated my diffusers. They have to have them for bedtime. So we have lavender and cedarwood going in their bedrooms for sleepy time. But I definitely rubbed on joy and peppermint to keep me in my in my happy place. Yes, I'm a big oil fan.
So I've been doing the off-brand. So I don't know what the names are, but basically mine, I think it's comparable to Joy.
Well, is it Happy, or isn't that what it's called?
Yeah, it's called, I think mine is Love.
Is it Love? Yeah,
mine
that's
is called Love.
As Joy.
Yeah, so that's our favorite. But my daughter, it's funny, we're going to have to talk offline about all the sleepy time stuff, because my daughter has such a hard time sleeping, and she keeps actually asking me for a diffuser and to get. She tells me, have you bought that sleepy oil yet? Because I need some help. So we're going down that path.
My daughter had a really hard time getting to sleep. And when I started diffusing lavender in her room, it helps her get to sleep a lot easier. And cedarwood is known for helping sleep issues. It smells kind of icky, but combined with the lavender, it's not bad. And I have to say, my kids never sleep past 7. And I did it in their room last night, and none of them woke up until 7:45 this morning.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I was like, whoa.
I'm going to buy it tonight.
That's pretty awesome. Anyway, sorry. You can cut out all the oil stuff.
No, it's great, because I think it's a thing that people are interested in, but they don't really know what to do. So I think hearing about it is good, especially success stories. So, okay, so let's hop into your story that we're going to talk about tonight. And I love your story because I think there's a lot of people that have been in your shoes, and that is that you guys were in your young married life and had a lot of plans for your future, and basically you didn't get any of it. But you are able to trust God and see that He's so faithful to you guys and to see how that worked out for you guys. So would you take us back to the beginning of that story when you guys are, young married and have all your plans?
My husband and I got married right out of college, and we went to college in Richmond, Virginia, which is where I grew up, and we moved to Nashville, and he was a graduate student at Vanderbilt getting his PhD. And about 2 years into our marriage, we bought a condo in Nashville, knowing full well that we were probably going to have to move in 3 years. But we thought, well, as long as we can break even, at least we don't have to live with someone living above us in an apartment, stomping on our heads. The person who lived above us in our apartment, when we lived in apartment, let their alarm clock go off for like 2 hours every morning.
Oh my gosh.
And had a small child and played really loud movies, and we were just like, we're so over this. Let's just buy a house. So we bought a little condo. It wasn't much. It was a little 2-bedroom, tiny thing, but it was what we could afford, and we really loved it. And so our plan was that when Adam was done with his PhD, that he would find a job as a college professor. And we were hoping that we could move both of our parents at the time lived outside of Philadelphia. So I was really counting on living close to my mom and dad. Mm-hmm. Especially once we started having kids. I was like, I just want my mom.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of our parents lived near us, and I honestly do not know what we would do without them.
It's really hard. So that was our big plan. And so we had our daughter in October of 2008. That was his last year of graduate school, the start of his last year of school. And that was around the same time he was applying for jobs. And there's this big conference. He's in math. Was in the program for math. And he was going to go to this conference in January and interview for jobs. And so he put out a bunch of applications, and he didn't even get an interview anywhere. And I just remember this point in time. We were so excited. We had our first baby. It was Christmas time. And I just remember all three of us laying on our bed, me, Adam, and baby Libby, and all three of us were crying.
Aww.
because we just kind of had this realization that, okay, this is just not happening. Obviously, 2008 was sort of when the economy crashed, and there was hundreds of people applying for positions for math professors, which totally blows my mind. Obviously, I think my husband is the most brilliant person in the world, and I have no idea what, except for God, why he wouldn't have gotten any interviews. I never want to feel like, I'm disrespecting him. He definitely could have easily been a professor.
Yeah. So that was a really I guess you could say that was a really confusing time when you're saying, God, he did all this work and he's super smart, and yet you are not coming through for us right now.
We were just really lost as to what the next step was going to be. It was super difficult I think it's always kind of really hard to come to terms with, okay, this dream is not going to come to fruition. So what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
So we decided that Adam applied for some jobs in Nashville to see if he could find a job in high school. And he had an interview, and it just wasn't anything that panned out. So finally he applied to a teaching agency, and the first place they got him an interview was the school where we are now. And so it was super fast. He interviewed. They asked him. We drove to Chattanooga. He had, the big interview. It was very late in the school year, which is really unusual. But someone had backed out, at the very last minute for the next year. And so they had him teach a class and meet with all the math faculty. And the next day they offered him this job in Chattanooga. And we have absolutely loved visiting. We really loved all the people we met. We loved seeing Chattanooga. It's just an incredible place. It's gorgeous with all the mountains. And so he accepted. And then our next step, we said, well, now we have to sell the house.
Yeah. So you weren't moving back home, and he was not going to be a college professor. So
that was, I was like, okay, so we are not going to be any closer to my mom. In fact, we're going to be farther away.
Oh, my gosh.
And, but only, it was like an hour difference. It wasn't a huge deal. It's only 2 hours from Nashville to Chattanooga. So we put our house in the market, but it was, like I said, it was in a condo community, and it was a new build when we bought it. And they had told us that by 2008, the whole neighborhood would be done. But with the housing crash, that didn't happen. So the neighborhood wasn't finished yet. So pretty much people could buy the same condo we had for the same price.
Yes, that was happening a lot here. We had a lot of, in my area, I'm in a suburb of Charlotte, and I think the same thing happened. There were so many new builds, but it was so hard to sell because, like you said, it's the same price for a brand new. Why wouldn't you? I would do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it was not, it was 3 years old, but still it wasn't brand new.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. We had lived in it. So we went through that summer kind of not knowing what was going to happen. And eventually it became clear that we were not going to have sold this house by the time Adam needed to move to start school. So we rented a house in Chattanooga, and then Libby and I stayed in the house in Nashville, and I was still working full time. And so I worked and had a baby, and Adam lived in Chattanooga.
Oh my gosh.
And came home on the weekends for 4 months.
My heart totally goes out to you because I was in those same shoes. I don't know if you know, but like when Scott got on the Highway Patrol, he has to go to police academy, and the police academy lasts for 4 or 5 months. So we had Emma in November of 2002. He started academy. He got the job, I think, in the same month she was born, but he didn't start academy till January. And I was working full time, and I was driving 33 miles to work. And he was just coming home on the weekends. And so I had my very first child, 2 months. Same thing. Terrible. It was the most stressful time of my whole working career. It was terrible. So I feel for you. I know that was a difficult time.
Yeah, it was really hard. And I got off work and got Libby fed and got home and she went to bed at 7 o'clock. And then I was like, I have probably the only time in my life I've had all the alone time in the world I could ever need. And
that is the one nice
it
thing,
was just very strange. Well, it was, it's good and bad. It gets old. Yeah. I always think, I want all this alone time. And then after an hour, I'm ready for the masses to come back.
Absolutely.
Love on me. So we had something like 35 showings.
And that's the other thing. You had showings at the same time. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I'm not a very good housekeeper.
Wow.
So it was kind of pretty stressful for me to just try to keep everything showing ready in case they wanted to come while I was at work, and I didn't have much warning, and I had baby stuff and craziness. So that was pretty wild, but yeah, we had something like 35 showings. We had one very, very bad offer, which we, probably should have taken, but we didn't. We just did not have the money to, make a really low ball sale. We just couldn't make it up. We didn't have that savings. So in January, after, I think it was almost 5 months that Libby and I lived in Nashville, and he lived in Chattanooga. So after that time, we decided we were going to move to Chattanooga. And I just was looking back at some of the blog posts I wrote, and it looked like November before we moved was about the time that I lost my mind. I up until that point, I think, and through this all, I really felt a lot of peace from God that it was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
mm-hmm.
that sort of peace that passes understanding. But November, I think, kind of shook things up for me, and I really was starting to be like, God, are you for me? You know,
right?
Are you really, like, why is this happening to us?
Right. And so not only you guys have this emotional strain, I mean, you guys, with your marriage being apart, you know, dealing with your daughter, working, all the showings, but you guys also had like financial strain, right?
Oh, yeah. We had a mortgage and a rent, which is, you know, difficult for anybody. No, we had two incomes, which was great for a while, which is why I stayed in Nashville as long as I did. But still, you know, that's a huge financial burden on anybody.
Yeah, you only can do that for so long.
Right. Well, we ended up doing it for about 2 years.
That's insane. Wow.
So then Lindsay and I moved to Chattanooga, and I quit my job, and since then I've just worked freelance, so I don't make a whole lot of money. It's just here and there. And so in April, one of my friends was going through a divorce, and she had, I think her daughter was about 5, and she was not making ends meet, and she needed a place to live. So we decided we would rent her our condo and take it off the market for a while. It really eased our burden a little bit. You know, she wasn't making the full mortgage by any means, but it was helping her. It helped our sanity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also I think it was that March. So I think she started renting from us in April. In March, we found out we were pregnant again.
Oh, my goodness.
When in a city where I didn't know anybody.
Wow.
So that was very interesting. So it was a highly stressful time. I deal with depression, and my depression is really triggered by change. Mm-hmm. So in just a few months, we had moved to a new city with a baby. I mean, she was a young toddler at this point, 1 year, and she was a 1-year-old. We found out we were pregnant.
You quit your job.
Church. I quit my job. It was just a mass of change all at one time. And so that really, being able to rent to our friend, it took off some of the burden and of having to deal with all the showings and the realtors and all of that. So she stayed there a year, and we thought, well, maybe in a year things will change with the housing market. But they didn't. So we tried to short sell the condo, which involves tons of paperwork. And we had a decent cash offer, and the bank wouldn't take it. Mm. So that was really disappointing. And they said that our house was worth almost as much as we paid for it, which was completely untrue given the economy. So it was, that was kind of, I still try not to harbor a bunch of bitterness because it doesn't do any good. You know, what good is it going to do now?
Yeah.
And also when my renter moved out, she had the water turned off, and when they disconnected the washers, they didn't turn off the handles. So the house got kind of flooded.
Oh, no. So you're like, 2 hours away?
Yes. So I went, David was a little baby. So I had to take Olivia and David there and deal with all of that and pick out carpet and pay for, you know.
Oh,
I had to have all of that redone. We had a realtor at that point who was a saint. And I still feel really bad that we didn't sell the house, so she did not make any money off of it, because she was the biggest blessing ever. We switched realtors after we put it back on the market, and she was amazing. So she took care of, all of this for me, but we still had to go and, deal with the money side, some of it. When we didn't have any money to spend, because we had been paying a rent and a mortgage at that point for a year and a half.
Well, life just wasn't fun enough, was it? You just had to add some excitement.
At that point, it wasn't funny. Now I'm like, it was almost funny. It's almost a comedy of errors, but at that point, I was so extremely depressed, I don't even know.
So you were really struggling with depression through this time.
I was. After David was born in December, we moved in January, and he was born that December, about almost a year later. And I really struggled with depression after he was born. I was on medicine for it, but he did not sleep until he was 15 months old.
Oh,
he did not sleep through that. So he was a really, really difficult baby. He didn't sleep. We had all this other, financial struggles going on. And I remember at one point I had to call someone that I barely knew from church. And she came and she took Libby and David, to the mall, because I was honestly scared, that I was going to shake the baby or something, something
yeah.
I was crying and I could not stop crying. And I said when I look back at it now that I hardly remember the whole first year of David's life.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of blocked it out.
I've heard people say that before.
So emotionally painful that whole year.
Yeah.
That, between being incredibly sleep deprived and then going through all of this stuff with our house to the point where obviously we did not short sell it. We foreclosed that September when David was 9 months old.
And that's something you probably were trying to avoid at all costs.
Oh my goodness. We never, ever, ever thought we would be people who had a foreclosure.
Yeah.
When we started, Adam and I, we had, my parents paid my student loans, have paid my student loans, and Adam didn't have any. So we had no student loans. We had no car payments. Our credit score was 800. We've never felt like, we were irresponsible financially.
Right.
We're very, and especially my husband, he's very, very responsible, very, doesn't like to spend money. And so for this to happen, it was just, I never would have thought we would foreclose. But there just reached a point where, I wasn't working. And with 2 children, and given what I do, which was editing, it wouldn't have made sense for me to go back to work anyway.
Yeah.
It doesn't pay off with daycare.
Daycare costs are insane.
Yeah. Even, when I was working with Libby, in daycare full time, it was enough, but still, I think it was half my salary to pay for her daycare. It's crazy.
So how are you feeling just from, your faith perspective? I mean, is this the point where you really get to the point where, God is, totally absent, or are you feeling pretty peaceful about this decision?
I think I kind of wavered back and forth.
Don't you think that? I feel like it's like a Jekyll and Hyde. Isn't that what they're called? Jekyll and Hyde, where it's your brain tells you, no, 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 and then you've got the peace on the other side, and it kind of battles between each other.
I really feel through the whole thing. I mean, despite the depression, despite everything else, I felt like God was in control of the situation, especially when I was living by myself. I'm a worrier and an anxious person, and I just felt such an overwhelming peace during that time. But I remember going to church, and I think I just, passed the Wednesday night service. I was probably taking my kids to class or something, and I heard something, and I remember thinking for the first time that, if we have to foreclose, it will be because God wants me to minister to other people about it. And that was really the first time I had ever, admitted that it could happen. And then I remember when one night we were just laying in bed, and then I asked Adam, what are we going to do? And he said, we're going to foreclose. And just hearing him say that, it brought me such a relief that, we weren't going to have to fight this battle anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. So God really kept me in peace about it. And I never felt really frantic or like we were going to, have to go move back in with my parents or anything like that. Like, I felt like he was taking care of us and keeping us close together.
Yeah. So even the one thing you just never thought you would do, you really felt God's peace about it.
I did.
That's awesome.
We knew that when we moved here to the school, or to Chattanooga, that there was an opportunity that we could move on campus. And we thought, oh, well, that would be awesome because we wouldn't have to pay rent then. You pay for your living here in Judy. You are a dorm parent.
Okay, so your school, this is a high school, but some of the kids live on campus. Tell me about this more.
It is. It's a private high school, and it's about 80% local and 20% boarding. There are about 200 boarding students.
Okay. I don't think we have those around here. I don't know of any schools like that around here. Interesting.
It's not something. Chattanooga's a very private school city, if that makes any sense. And there are 3 big private high schools, and the one that we are at is co-ed, and then there's a girls and a boys. And I believe that they're all like this, but they're mixed, local and boarding. So we knew that was an opportunity, and I was sure, once again, I was so sure that after our first year in Chattanooga that we would be able to move on to campus, and that was going to solve all of our problems.
Yep.
And they didn't have any room for us.
Oh.
And so then we're going through this foreclosure, and a week and a half before the school year was going to start, Adam's 3rd year, so that would have been in the fall of 2011, they called us a week and a half before and said, oh, we have an apartment for you. Do you want to move on campus?
So you guys foreclosed in the fall and then a whole year later before you got this call. Is that right? So there was a year?
No, it was the same year.
The same year, okay.
We lived in Chattanooga for 2 years before we actually foreclosed.
Okay.
So we paid, for most of that we were paying a rent and a mortgage, or at least part of our mortgage as much as we could muster up. They called us a week and a half before school started, and so we moved on to campus, and about 3 weeks later was our actual foreclosure date.
Okay, so you got a place and then you foreclosed.
Yes.
Wow.
And so just the ability and the timing of us to move on campus was amazing. It was really in God's hands because, with the foreclosure, we can't get, our credit went kablank, and it's hard to get even to rent someplace with our credit like that. So we've lived on campus now. This is the 4th year, I think. I think it's the 4th year, and it's just giving us a chance to rebuild our credit and save money. And
so that's pretty amazing. So if I understand this right, you foreclosed, so you didn't have to pay for that mortgage anymore. You moved on campus, so you didn't have to pay your rent. So you're freed up from 2 payments. And
yes, but then we kind of had to repay our second mortgage, so we ended up paying $15,000.
Oh.
But that was after we had lived here for a year, so we actually had most of it in cash.
Yeah, I was going to say, but still, that's amazing that you went from 2 to 1. From 2 to none, and God might have allowed that foreclosure, but also provided a way for you to build everything back up after the foreclosure. I think that's amazing.
It was a great provision. Bad things happen, and God allows them, but He definitely provided for our family through all of it.
And your husband is enjoying high school?
My husband is so much happier teaching high school than he would have ever been teaching college. He really did not care for the research part of teaching. He taught classes at Vanderbilt, but, was doing research. He actually didn't finish his PhD because his research kind of had some issues, and he was already teaching here, and just decided that's not his thing.
Yeah.
It's not what he loves. He just loves teaching, and he loves the kids, and he's had such great opportunities here to be a dorm parent. We get to have a small group of some boarding kids who we sort of take in as they're our kids.
Awesome.
So not only that, the dorm where we live, I say, I have 35 sons in addition to my 2 genetic sons.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that.
And I just love them. It's neat. So not only do I get to minister to people about the foreclosure, like we get to minister to all these boys just by loving them and feeding them and being there for them when they need help. So.
And I love so much. I just love it that you guys had, the college world kind of in mind. And this high school, because it's a boarding school and the dorms and all that, sort of has a college feel to it. I mean, I'm sure it's so different, but I just love it. It almost is like a combination, maybe of the two. That
it is. And it's like all the good things about college without Adam having to do like the research and fighting for tenure and all that madness. So
yeah.
It's amazing. He's so happy here. We love the school so much.
So excited for you guys. That's so cool. You guys, oh man, how many years of that struggle. I feel for you guys, but to see that God's hand was in all of that and provided a place for you guys and provided a job that you didn't even know you wanted. And it's so cool.
What's funny about with our parents is that shortly after we moved here, my dad's company got bought out, and they ended up having to move anyway. So my parents have moved twice since then, and my husband's parents, my father-in-law also, he lost his job during the economy. And so my in-laws now live 5 hours away in North Carolina, and my parents live 6.5 hours away in North Carolina, which is much closer than they were living in Philadelphia. So it's a good thing that we didn't move to Philadelphia.
Oh my gosh! So even if you had gone through with it, you still would not have been near your parents.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh! God knows what He's doing, doesn't He? That is so awesome.
Yeah, and so they're not, it's easy, but it's much more feasible for us to drive 6 hours than to drive 14.
Oh, man, that's so awesome. Okay, so Jessie, I just love your story. I always like to ask, is there any scripture that particularly, helped you through this, or that you would look back at that time and, maybe give to somebody else that might be going through that same type of issue?
This is going to sound really weird, but this passage from Isaiah spoke to me during this time. It's Isaiah 8:10. It says, "Devise a plan, it will fail. Make a prediction, it will not happen. For God is with us." And I know that sounds like the most negative thing in the world.
Oh my gosh, it gives me chills. Like, seriously.
But I would just remember coming across and reading that when we were still in national, when we were going through this, and thinking, my plans are not God's plans. And I can make all the plans I want, but they're probably going to fail. But God is still with us, and God is the one who's going to make our plans that aren't going to.
Yeah, and just we can have these plans, but just following Him in the journey and trusting Him in those small steps is where it all comes to fruition, right? So I think we try to project, especially I think when you're young and you think, how many kids am I going to have? What am I going to be when I grow up? Where are we going to live? And you try to predict 20 years in the future, and it's pointless, right? It's just so pointless.
Yes.
And it's all about, following those small steps.
Modern Mrs. Darcy, do you read her blog?
Oh, I love Anne. Yeah.
I love her. Yep. I'm seriously devoted to her blog. But she wrote a post maybe this past week about how you have to change your life every 5 years or something, how things seem to change every 5 years. Mm-hmm. And so now this is, all about 5 years ago, and I'm going, oh no, I can't do this again. Please, God, don't make me change everything again.
Oh my gosh.
Like maybe this time, like emotionally, I feel like I'm in a point
Where's
where
my essential oil?
I'm sort
right?
of yes, I'm sort of finding structure, finding my confidence as a person, as a child of God, as a parent, and so I'm hoping that's the remaking of my life that I'm doing right now.
Well, isn't the remaking though, like even if it all went crazy, like I would think that you've learned so much about how faithful God is, no matter what bad things happen, right?
It's been totally worth it. All of it it's totally worth it. I love that from 2 Corinthians where it says that God's the God of all comfort, and He comforts us in our troubles so that we can comfort those in trouble with the comfort we've received from Him. He uses the word comfort a whole lot, but I think that's good. That's on purpose, that we're able to take His comfort and then share it with other people, no matter what we've been through.
Yep, and I think you've definitely done that today. So, Jessie, tell us where we can find you online.
Sure. My site is jessieweaver.net. It's JESSIE, jessieweaver.net. And most places on social media, I'm Vanderbilt Wife, not Instagram, because I live in the dark ages.
We'll forgive you.
And on Facebook, I think it's Jessie Weaver, Vanderbilt Wife. I've also written a devotion, so you can find that on my website It's kind of taken from these last couple years of learning from my little kids and from our experiences.
All right, everybody go check that out. Well, thank you again so much, Jessie, for being on today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed Jessie's interview. I am so encouraged by her story, and I hope you are too, especially if you're in that time where those career changes and decisions and the place you are right now is not really where you planned at all, or that if your family is trying to sell your house or move and it's just not working out. Perhaps you're also staring down a foreclosure that you just really were not expecting. I just hoping that her story encourages you that you can trust Him in the big plans, but also in those small plans. So He asks us to do all those small steps to get us where we need to go, and that we can trust Him. So even when they don't make sense, we know that God is working everything for our good, and He sees us. He has not left us. He knows the desires in our heart, and He's going to bring all that together for our good. What I love most about their story is not just that they ended up in a career in a place that they love, but the reach that they are able to have with those boys. What a critical time in those boys' life, and how they are able to minister the gospel of Christ to them, even through small things like cupcakes. So God was in control of their situation, and He is in control of your situation, and He is going to use it for the glory of His name. So guys, I'm so excited to have you guys on this journey. Cannot wait till next week. If you guys want to give some feedback, you can join us over on featherspodcast.com. You can leave comments there. You can get my contact information there, and I would love to hear from you. So see you guys next time on Feathers.